Conversations with Niki is brought to you by studyapps.co.za, South Africa's leading education app for tablets. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. It's wonderful to be with you. My name is Niki Seberini, and this, of course, is Conversations with Niki. It's lovely to have you, and also our syndication partner listeners. That is Eldo's FM, Chai FM, Kawi FM, West Coast FM, that's in Namibia, 90.3 MC in Plet, Knysna FM, Wild Coast FM, and Bay FM, all the listeners from all over South Africa. So a reminder, do visit the website, and for those of you who have been communicating with me, lovely to hear from you, because a lot of the shows coming up in the next few weeks are happening because of suggestions from you, listeners of Conversations with Niki. So do get in touch. Just go to the website, www.conversationswithniki, Niki spelled Niki.co.za. And also all the shows are podcasts, so if you've missed any, you can go along there and you can catch up on all of those shows. Now, today we're going to be hearing a story that I think a number of young black men and women will be able to relate to. It's something that is a direct result of apartheid, and it's a story of men and women leaving their homes, going to the cities to work, to find work, and having grandparents bringing up the grandchildren. Now, the story you're going to be hearing today is slightly different to that story that millions of people in South Africa today can tell, because in a lot of liberal households, the situation was slightly different. So you had young children who were being born to domestic workers, and instead of being sent home to grandparents, some of them stayed and in the cities and were educated and lived a very, very different life to many other brothers and sisters. And we have in the studio today a very well-known South African actress. She's a TV radio presenter, a TV and film producer. She's a voiceover artist, a media trainer, a global MC, and I think very importantly, an activist. So I'm so delighted to welcome Rosie Motene into the studio. Rosie, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
What a story you have to share.
Yes, it is.
What a story you have to share. So, I mean, when you hear me introducing something like that, I mean, what goes through your mind? You think, oh, not again.
It's always interesting to see what people will highlight and what they've picked up on. You know, it's just, it varies according to different people.
Okay. Well, that in itself is very interesting. So, I mean, you and I chatted, and I said, I mean, this is your unique story.
Yeah.
And it's so unique to South Africa, to the situation, to our history. And I just wonder how many people listening can relate to that story, being the child who was brought up in a home, who had their mother being the domestic worker, and who were brothers and sisters to that person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Rosie, and that's defined who you are today. And I'm sure it's redefining on a continual basis who you are. That's interesting.
The most important thing. You know, as you grow older, you realize what's important and things that you may have missed out on or that you lack in your personal growth. And for me, it's being able to acknowledge that. And although you'll never be able to make up the years, but then you know where to seek for it or look for it or breathe or move on, you know.
But you're in a good space.
I'm in a great space now. I've been through crazy.
You have.
You know. But one thing that I've learned, and as I said, as you get older, is that the minute you hit that space that you're not comfortable with, is that dwell there, deal with it, figure out what is wrong and what needs to be done. And if you need to cry, if you need to be depressed or need to be sick or whatever, do that, get it out of your system, and then make plans to get yourself up above ground again.
So let's talk about that, because such wise words.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you got to that point, because I'm sure there was a lot of soul searching to get to that point. You lived in Johannesburg. You were brought up in a white Jewish home. Tell us more.
I was brought up in a home in Emmarentia. My mother was, as you mentioned, a domestic worker for a Jewish family, and she'd been working there for many, many years, in fact raised their children. And my mother fell pregnant, and the plan was, obviously, when she had me, I would come to Johannesburg for 3 months and then go back to, which was known then as Botswana, and be raised by my maternal grandmother. But after 3 months and being in the house and this new baby in the house and sparkly eyes and the children running around,
Giggle, giggle, giggle.
Nobody wanted to let me go. So I stayed, and the family were incredibly generous and offered to educate me.
But hang on.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
let's just talk about that. I mean, did they then discuss it with your mom? Did they say we
that's-
want to give
yeah.
her this opportunity? Was it whose decision was this?
Well, that's one of the things that I'm dealing with where I am now is
Okay.
trying to grapple and find out these answers and what the deal was, if it was a deal is per se. Why did they do that? You know, it was a very, very volatile and difficult situation. I mean, I was born in 1974. So it's, apartheid.
The height
it was the height of apartheid, and the decisions that they decided to go forward with, and those are some of the things that have frustrated me because nobody will give me a clear answer. Unfortunately, my adopted father is no longer with us, and unfortunately, once again, is that I don't speak to the other family, and speaking to my biological family, it's also just it raises a lot of I can see pain and a lot of things that some people don't want to talk about. So some questions I know I just won't ever get answered. And where I am now, it's that I was given this great opportunity. Yes, I've missed out on a lot of my tradition and my culture and so forth, and I'll get into that later on. But although I missed out on that, I had a fantastic upbringing with its challenges. I mean, I went through major identity crisis, and I always said when I was in my 20s, I was fine in my 20s. But looking back, I could honestly say through most of my 20s, it still plagued you for a while. I mean.
Rosie, what was it like growing up in this household? You had 4 siblings.
Yeah.
You also have a biological sister, an older biological sister. But growing up in this particular household with your mother as the domestic worker, so who did you call mom?
My adopted mom.
Your adopted mom. Ouch.
For many, many years, you see, because it was so ambiguous. So when I was younger and I used to go home, and that when I mean go home to Pugeng, to Rustenburg for December holidays and so forth, I would switch and then I would call her mom. But majority of the year, I would be calling her by her nickname, which was Bumba. And then in my 20s, I made a concerted effort. I was like, no, wait a minute, she's mama, and I still continue to call my adopted mother mommy. And so that's where the difference.
Was it confusing for you at the time, or
It
was it just a
incredibly-
natural?
Of course, it was very confusing, and especially because the family were white, and then they were also very, very protective. So certain places I couldn't go to, and then there were like weird excuses that were made why I couldn't go to certain places. And for many years, because they used to spend a lot of time in Durban. And Durban was one of the last places to cut the laws on segregation and so forth. And their excuse was, no, they don't allow children in Durban. And so for many years, I'm thinking, well, I see on TV their children on the beach.
They took this very complex issue, and they just didn't know how to explain this to you, which created so much confusion within you. Perhaps if they had the discussion,
maybe.
I wonder how you would have responded had they had that discussion.
I think if we were a bit more open and had that discussion, it would have cleared up a lot of other things, because, for instance, when I was I think I must have been about 11, 12, a friend of mine had a party at a public park, and there was a swimming pool next door. So I quickly got my costume, and I remember the friend's father rushing out to me saying, no, you can't swim. It's only for every people in the area. And I was like, rubbish, ran like a naughty kid. And I was a very good swimmer at school. In fact, I was in the A team, and got to the gate, and the woman was like, no, they can come in, you can't come in.
No.
We don't allow and use the K word. First of all, I was like, well, what is this word? But anyway, I'm in the A team. No, she can't swim. I'm a better swimmer.
Exactly.
And
the innocence.
And I'll never
child.
forget this look in this woman's face. First of all, the fact that I answered her back. And second of all, was that I was telling her, and I think also because of my accent, so this woman was totally confused. And then she was like, "No, don't you get it? It's not a multiracial pool." And
that still had no meaning.
Yeah,
for you.
and then a friend of mine was like, "No, they don't allow blacks," and I was like, "Wow." And then I remember sitting and watching some of my friends swim.
Oh.
And then somebody came and took them out and said, "Okay, listen, if nobody's going to swim," and they ended up, and I kept it to myself. And then when I got home, I just burst into tears. And
could you talk to anyone?
And I spoke to my brother Mark, and and he explained about things in the country and what was happening, whatever. and it hurt, but I still, and then I sort of think, okay, well, that makes sense. Why some places I can go to? Why? I don't know if you remember, like in the newspaper when you wanted to go to see a movie, I always used to look for that sign that it said "all welcome," because then I was allowed.
I don't even know what sign you're talking about.
There used to be a sign that said "all welcome," which meant they allowed black people in, but it was normally like a morning show or afternoon show. They were always.
So you felt like you belonged in this family, but you didn't actually. There were conditions.
Yeah, there were always conditions. And. As much as they did love me, and I'm not saying that the conditions were there to put there deliberately, but it was just it was always conditional,
And growing up, I mean, when you're this little girl, this wonderful, innocent little child, and you look in the mirror and you look different to your brothers and sisters, how did they explain that? I mean, how did they rationalize something like that?
Well, there wasn't any rationale put across. It was just that, well, you're special. And that's something that I held on to for a very, very long time. But then that specialness for me started turning into ugly. And through my teens, I hated being black. Hated it. Wanted to straighten my hair. I looked into what I could do to maybe try and lighten my skin. I hated anything to be associated with black. Refused to speak a black language. And that's why it's taken me so long now learning, because I just was like, because everything around me was black is wrong.
Right.
And I didn't have somebody at home saying, actually, no, you will speak the language, or be proud of who you are.
Your mother, was she not strong enough, or did she not want to upset the people that she was working for?
I think there were a lot of dynamics. In terms of strong, I think she's one of the most strongest women I know, because I think now I look back, for her, what she dealt with, and dealing with a daughter who didn't acknowledge her for many, many years, it takes a hell of a lot of strength and a lot of resilience. But also understand the dynamics of the master-servant relationship. I mean, my mother she's in her 70s now. So she's grown up that way. It's, even when, and we'll talk about that later, with me living in Pugeng, is that I still see the dynamics of apartheid there.
You do?
Yeah, you see, and I will walk in town, and a white person will be walking in front of me, and then they'll stop, and they're like, move. And I'm like, no. They're like, move. No. So it's like those small dynamics, and,
I hear you.
and just attitudes of some people when you walk into the shop, or you can see older black people won't look at white people in the aisle. Well, they'll still call them madam or boss.
Still today.
Yeah, it's still there.
In Pugeng.
Yeah. Rustenburg, it's still there. I mean, there's a lot of change that's happened, don't get me wrong, but those other dynamics, in fact, it even happened with one of our, I'm not going to mention on air, but one of our cell phone networks, because I went in and had a problem, and I received such racist and nasty treatment. I walked out and I tweeted, and I won't go back to that service provider again. And I spoke about those issues, because I was like, we're living in 2013, and I walked into the shop and there were 4 people sitting behind a desk. There must have been 5 or 6 black people waiting. None of them got up to say, can I help you? And only when I went to the desk, they were like, almost as if to say, well, how dare you come sit at my desk?
And you're saying that's what your mom lives, and that's what she's had her whole life, even today.
Yeah.
It's still there.
It's still there, and at the time, yes, it's happened a lot over the years where employees have educated and looked after their employees' children, but then it just wasn't happening. It didn't happen, and the fact that my parents were going to have a child that was going to get a proper education. I mean, Bantu education was
their gift.
Yeah.
It was a loss, but it was their gift to you.
So they made a lot of sacrifices,
a
lot of sacrifices, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons why my mother maybe suffers from high blood pressure, because of that worry that she's held on to.
Quietly kept it in.
Quietly, and then
being the mother and not being able to be the mother. I realized that that's one of the traits that I've taken on from her, is that I've learned over the years to cry silently. Oh,
and now being in the industry, and also just becoming a lot more comfortable of what I want and what I don't want, I'm learning to express myself a lot more, which is healing.
Because you had to keep quiet a lot. You had to. I'm just trying to, being a mother, I'm trying to put myself in your mother's position, and seeing my child every single day and not being able to be the mother, it would very, very slowly eat away at my heart.
Yeah.
So there's lots of healing happening right now.
A lot of healing.
Okay, well, I'm delighted because we've actually got your mother on the line.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk to Jacobeth
cool.
and just get her perspective.
Okay.
you know, this is an extraordinary story, and let's see what Jacobeth has to say. Hi, Jacobeth. Thank you very, very, very much for coming onto the show.
Hi, Mama.
Hello, baby.
How are you?
I'm Canberra with you.
Good.
Okay.
Now, Jacobeth, we're hearing about Rosie's story, and I was just saying just before you came on that I'm a mother myself, and
Yes.
it must have been so difficult because you were giving Rosie such a gift by handing her over to this family to educate her and give her a chance in life. But it was such a huge loss for you. Perhaps you can explain how you felt during that time.
I'm not this feeling very bad, but now because it's near me, I'm okay. I'm all right. It's got to be all right.
Because now she's living with you, the connection's happening, Jacobeth. How does that feel, having Rosie back as your daughter?
But when she was by the white people, I was there working there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
she was with me there.
Yes.
Yes.
And what was that like, Jacobeth, working there and having her live there, but living in the house, not living with you? How was that for you?
I thought I didn't think anything. I thought it's okay. It's got to be all right because I know it's my child.
Mm-hmm. And the decision, because she was going to get a good education and a good opportunity.
Yes, because we want to get the education like he got it now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Jacobeth, did it ever cross your mind? Did you ever think, I made the wrong decision, I shouldn't have done this?
Yes. I am.
So how?
I didn't think today is going to be like this.
Mm. And how is your relationship with Rosie now?
Oh, very, very, very close. Very close. Very nicely.
Are you proud of her?
I'm very proud of her. I'm very proud of her.
So when you
And actually, all the family, it's just proud of her. It's just happy, very happy.
She's achieved so much, Jacobeth, and she continues to do such wonderful things. So I can imagine that you are very proud. So when you see what she has become, and you think of the decision you made all those years ago, do you think you made the right decision?
I didn't think I made the right decision. I'm just sorry for her. I'm very sorry for her.
How is she doing with learning her language, learning more about her culture? Are you helping her with that?
I'm very helping with talking English. It's just have a fun a little bit, and he can hear it, but not to reply back. But it's coming.
It's coming. Jacobeth, thank you very much. Thank you for coming onto the show.
Oh,
Thank you
very
for sharing a little bit of how you feel.
Okay,
Rosie's sitting here with a very big smile on her face.
Love you, Mama. Love you.
I love you, baby. I love you, my darling.
Thank you, Jacobeth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The ultimate sacrifice, Rosie.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And she got you back.
Yeah.
And she loves you,
Yeah.
and she is so proud
And
of you.
I mean, those first couple of weeks, I mean, when I finally went home, it was a point where physically I thought if I don't listen to the signs of my body, I'm going to have a breakdown. So I needed rest. And I put on weight, which is fine. The first time in my life, I'm actually okay.
Are you
with the
being
fact that, because she's feeding me, and my mother's a phenomenal cook.
Oh.
But it's just having that peace of mind. And we have conversations that we've never had before.
So
and
you're just finding out about this person.
Yeah.
It's like you're discovering your mother.
Yeah. And discovering, the beauty of Pugeng. And I went to the Bafokeng administration just to read up. And it was funny. The woman was like, okay, so what are you catching up on your tradition? And I was like, nope. I'm learning from the beginning. So she's like, okay. And she gives me this big diary. She was like, start there. Big dictionary. She goes, start there, and reading this beautiful book called People of the Jew. which for me, when I started reading it, I suddenly remembered
Of the Dew.
Of the Dew, yeah.
D-E-W.
Yeah, and that's what
interesting, but that you're saying Jew, because we're going to get to the fact that you in fact are Jewish. But okay,
but
people of the Dew.
and that's what Pogeng means. It's a people of the Jew, because Po is Jew. But growing up, one of my favorite Hebrew names is Lital, which is also Jew. And I was
interesting.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, there is a connection in my madness,
So let's just rewind a little bit. Growing up.
Yeah.
Now the decision to go to school.
Yeah.
We're living in apartheid era. You've just described this horrific incident of not being able to swim in a public swimming pool.
Yeah.
So what was the decision about your schooling?
King David apparently said absolutely no. And my parents at the time lived in Emmarentia. And so the closest private school was a Catholic school, which was in Auckland Park, called Macaulay House. And I was enrolled there.
Many Catholic schools took on black children, coloured.
It was a safe haven. And ironically, you mentioned Indian. A lot of my friends were Muslims.
Living in a Jewish home, a black girl with Muslim friends
Only
going to
spoke
a Catholic school. Identity crisis. When did that hit exactly?
So, because they also felt the same way. So, and then most of my school life, I always had white friends.
Okay.
Purely the language. Also, I didn't want to associate with black. And then by the time I got to my teens, because I had created such an attitude, I mean, I had black friends, but not very, very tight. And also, I didn't relate. One of my friends, and she's actually a well-known radio presenter now, she lived with her aunt in Soweto, and a conversation was had with my parents, and it was decided I'm going to go spend the weekend with them. And I remember my mother preparing me like, okay, well, don't talk to boys, and don't do this, and don't go outside, and this and that, and call me every moment, because it was always drummed into my head that you go to Soweto, you're going to die, or you're going to get raped by a black boy. So it was like, I was like petrified. And I went there, and I was like, but these black people are cool. So,
and you were how old before you had that experience?
I must have been in my primary school. Yeah. You know, and to be so, and Aunt Anne, and funny enough, I actually bumped into Aunt Anne many years later. Those are two of the people that I'd like to thank just for that experience, because that was when I started thinking, although I didn't really let it portray or flow through my life, but started to think, well, wait a minute, you know, all black people aren't bad, you know.
And I maybe I belong there.
Yeah.
Like a sense of belonging.
Okay.
Not always feeling like you're sticking out.
Yeah. Yes. And also, proud. You know, now looking back, yes, now I'm a proud black woman, and I will say so. But then I would never have said it. And they were proud, and they would speak their language, and I was like, but that's so embarrassing. Speak English. Speak English.
and Rosie, I mean, being a teenager, I mean, teenagers, it's such they're difficult years. You know,
so glad I'm not there.
You know, you want to attach yourself to something. You want to belong to something. You start getting your body's changing. You're getting interested in. Well, it could be the same sex or the opposite sex or
but you
whatever
see,
happens.
That was one of my issues, and it got to a point where, I mean, we had other incidences, and there was one incident where I had a friend of mine, Claire, and her mom came from a very liberal family, but the south of Johannesburg were a lot of racist people lived there at the time, unfortunately. And I remember her mom saying, okay, well, you guys can have a treat and you can go to a club, but as long as you go with Claire's brother, who was also very cool. And I remember the club was called Top Club, and walked up, and as I got there, it was one of those scenarios where literally I think the music actually stopped when they saw me, and everyone went through, and the guy was like, sorry, you can come in, and like pushed me back. And my friend Claire was incredibly stroppy, and she came forward, she goes, no, why not? He goes, no, well, we don't allow the K word, we don't allow them in here. So Claire was like, okay, well then in that case then, she said something about, well, I know what my constitutional right, because she had a big mouth. Yes. And next thing I turn around, and he had thrown her down the flight of stairs. And then we went and called the brother, and the brother caused a fight, and we went home. And driving home, I was so angry, not because of what happened, was because I had ruined everybody else's evening. And that was the type of guilt that, and I didn't say anything, nothing was said. But then afterwards I noticed that I wasn't invited to so many parties or to go out, and
it was complicated.
It was complicated. You know, you got to check if Rosie can go in, or when it came to the point when we would go out and the girls would find guys, I would be the one like hanging onto the handbags, you know, because
There was
The only
there were
black
no
people, the only
relationships
black people
happening.
in the establishments were the ones that were cleaning the floors, you know, and like incidences.
And
that
what was going through your mind? Were
I
you
was angry
thinking
that I was black. Sorry, I'm shaking the
Okay,
table, but I was
okay.
angry that I was black.
that you just couldn't fit
Yeah.
in, that you couldn't be like everyone
Yeah.
else, be a teenager like everyone else.
and just like have a cute guy with crystal eyes that would also want to kiss me or phone me or take me out.
And you had no one to talk to
Yeah.
about this. So it just sat. You
It
just
sat
kept it
and
inside.
you hold and you hold and you hold and every now and then it would. I mean, months later, like another incident came out. And it was before the Top Club incident where we went camping and then we went into a canteen and this man came up to me and he turned around and he goes, "Hamba, get out." And automatically I knew what this was about. So I was like, you know what, my friend's already gone and I'll just hang out and make an excuse. And once again, my friend Claire stood up for me and went and told her mom. And I didn't say anything when I got home. And months later, the establishment actually called my house to apologize. But I was at school and my adopted mom had heard and she was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And I was like, because, I didn't speak about these things, you know.
Do you think they were aware of how difficult it was
Absolutely,
for you?
absolutely.
Do you think it was just so uncomfortable for them as well
Yeah,
that it was, as we said a little bit earlier, it was easier not to talk about it?
Yeah. You know, because also walking around, you know, people who didn't grow up, they must understand that even walking into a restaurant holding a black person's hand, especially a black child, looks. I mean, the first time we went to Durban, a car literally smashed into the car in front of them because my brother and I ran across the road and he put his arm around me and people literally turned around.
Really, Rosie?
You know, for some people,
I mean, we're talking about another time.
yeah,
and
it's a totally different era.
Really,
And then on top of it, what astounded people was that when I opened my mouth, they
You
were
had
like,
this
"Who-"
accent.
They were like, "Who's this kid?" You know. And then that was my advantage being at home because then people want to hear me speak. So that's how I got out of actually learning Tswana as well, because I was this novelty. But then after a while, this novelty wears out. It's like, because when you go somewhere, people say, "Okay, say this, say this," and then everyone would laugh, and you know. And after a while, I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm
Enough.
tired of being the
Right,
guinea pig." You
of
know,
course.
it's like, you know,
yeah,
see
the
me.
entertainer,
Yeah.
see me,
Yeah.
exactly. And your mom, what do you think your mom was thinking?
My biological mom.
Your biological mom,
You know,
seeing this
she-
all,
she-
stepping back. She made the
she
decision
took
to
a
step
lot of
back.
pain. A lot of pain. Not only every day cleaning up after her little brat, but you know, there are times where I just didn't go home. And I would make an excuse, and my adopted family would
Back home
allow
to
me
Rustenburg to-
So for many, many years, I didn't go home. You know, and when I'm being back home now, and I've been writing my book, and I remember there was one instance where I didn't even tell her that I wasn't going, and somebody from the adopted family mentioned it. And I just remember her going to the kitchen to drop off something. She just looked at me, and her eyes filled up with tears.
Oh.
And you know, it was I was caught up in my own world, and it's looking back at those scenarios where I can finally say that I'm learning something from my mom, and it's that strength and that resilience. Because she could have easily at any point turned around and lashed at me or done something, you know what I mean? But she kept quiet and she kept her strength and she kept her strength, and the love was always there.
And she had faith.
Yeah, yeah.
She had faith that you'd come back to her. You know,
Yeah.
she knew that giving you, or what do they
Yeah.
say, if you set a bird free,
Yeah,
if it comes back
but
to you,
also
it's
the fact
yours.
that, you know, and I think you would understand this, and I'll understand it when I have children, is that when I started getting ill, my mother was like, something's wrong, what is going on, come home, what is wrong? Even in the December, because I started getting ill from last year, and December I had terrible backache, and she goes, something is wrong. And a mother knows, only a mother can pick that up.
The
from a
instinct
child.
of a
Yeah.
mom.
I mean, at the age of 38 even, I was, you know.
And then, you know, we can fast track the high school.
Yeah.
Going to varsity,
Varsity was great, and the best thing I could have ever done in my life was doing the drama degree.
drama. Was
Because
that something
just-
you just always wanted to do?
No, I wanted to be a dancer. And,
Did
And
you?
my family were like, okay, be a dancer, but get a degree.
Well, Jewish family, you know, got to be educated. But isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
I mean, you were encouraged, and
Yeah.
you got this degree.
Thank God.
And a
yeah.
whole world opened up
Yeah.
for you.
And being at Wits Drama School was phenomenal, you know, and it just
'Cause
opened
freedom.
up, yeah. And talking about certain things, and it was one December and I hadn't been home for years, and I'd got in my car and I thought, it was Christmas Day, everyone was with their families. I was like, I need to, and I'd never driven to Phuket, and I got in my car and I found the house 3 hours, I think it was like 4 hours later, and it's only like a 3.5 hour drive. just so I can go and wish my parents happy Merry Christmas.
So that's when things just started
that's
to
when I started to acknowledge.
shift and acknowledge. Let's take a break, Rosie.
Sure.
What a story. I mean, I've got the goosebumps the whole way through. It's a fabulous story. Let's take a break.
Sure.
We'll be right back and we'll continue.
Hi, my name is S.V. Prinsloo, and I'm the HOD of IT Integration at Bridwin Preparatory School in Melrose. We started using study apps about 6 months ago and have seen astonishing results. We were quite amazed to see how quickly the kids have been able to use study apps and the benefits it has shown with regards to reinforcing what they've already learned inside the classroom. I would highly recommend study apps for any school.
Studyapps.co.za. Welcome back. If you have just tuned in, this is Conversations with Niki, and I'm Niki Seberini, and I am delighted to be with you. Welcoming our syndication partner listeners, Eldo's FM, Chai FM, Bay FM, East London, that's Wild Coast FM, Neisner FM, 90.3 MC, Kawi FM, and West Coast FM in Namibia. I have the lovely, the talented, the beautiful Rosie Motene in the studio. And Rosie has been sharing her story of growing up in a white family during the apartheid times and her experience, the wonderful opportunities she had, and hitting a stage when she had this identity crisis of who am I? Where do I belong? And what an interesting story. So Rosie, varsity was really a turning point for you.
You know, it was because our department allowed and in fact pushed for freedom of expression. I mean, we had this crazy lecturers who always were constantly pushing us to get to the inner depths of ourselves. And that's when I started, there was a turning point. And then I also just, you know, had a lot more black friends and going the alternative route, and, you know, just I think discovering myself of where I wanted to be, because I wanted to be a dancer. And it was my second year on stage as an actress. And after that curtain call, when there was standing ovation, I was like, wow, okay, this is it. This is where
I have found myself.
Yeah, you know, after going through that process of working on this character. I mean, my first role, I always have to try the most difficult things. My first role, I played a 50-year-old woman. You know?
You're crazy. At the age of 18.
Yeah, and it was
not a challenge.
No, not at all. And it was Can Timbers the suit, and you know, so also playing just one of South Africa's prolific writers' performances, and that's when I was like, okay, this is what I need to nurture. Unfortunately, one of my biggest regrets was that I didn't follow my dancing. I should have, although I got into my teachers, I should have followed it as a side, but I didn't. I let it go altogether.
And you regret
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Well, I mean, I try and do it all class with Quentin Jansen or David Matumela.
Oh, how divine.
Yeah. So, and everyone's like, oh my God, Rose, you look like you're in the middle of like a 50 Cent dance video, because I just let it go.
Oh, fantastic, Rosie. Listen, we mentioned at the beginning that you have this biological sister.
Yeah.
And that she's quite a bit older.
Yeah.
And that must have been, you know, quite difficult, because you had your brothers and sisters, the Friedman family,
Yeah.
and then you had this other sister.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of her? What was your relationship
You
like? Because
see
in a
also
moment you're going to be talking to your niece
Yeah.
who's going to be sharing.
You know, one of the things that I realized and this realization came through my process of writing and being at home this year, was that I resented her for many years because her skin is much lighter than mine.
Really?
So growing up, I was like, why has she got the light skin? Why has she got the straight hair? You know, and now our relationship is getting there. But a friend of mine, Alison, said to me last year, she said, yeah, but the way you're talking about your sister and you argue what you're arguing about, that's sibling rivalry. You know, so
why were you questioning it? Were you thinking, oh no, we're fighting and we have issues?
And she was like, no, please, my sister and I do that all the time. So no, the glass is there. No, the glass is there. Or you're looking fat. No, you're looking fat. That's what sisters do. But we didn't have that growing up. So it's like when she does do it now, I'm like, okay, cool. What you gonna say now? You know what I mean? So it's like let's find out more about each other, which is really exciting. And it's two different cultures. There's a vast difference, and a lot has happened in the last couple of years. But I know she's got my back.
And she's married?
She was married.
How many children does she have?
She's got 3 beautiful children, which she's raised on her own. She divorced her husband, fortunately, and when the children were very young. And Carol, who we're going to speak to, is phenomenal woman who I actually look up to, because she's raising 3 beautiful boys who are just so cute and so naughty and so divine. And she's just,
Well, we've got Carol on the line. So put your cans on. Carol, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hello. How are you, my darling?
Good and you?
Good.
Listen, she sang your praises, Carol. So, Carol, I want to know, when you were a little girl, did your mother Nellie tell you a lot about this sister of hers, Rosie, who you hardly ever saw?
She didn't talk about her a lot when I was young, but when I was old enough to understand, she did speak to me about her. Most of the time she would say, I feel like talking, but my child, you're still young, you understand. I wish my sister was here so that I can talk to her. You understand? I think the distance thing and the fact that my aunt had to work, I mean, you have to build your career, you understand? So her being away, so it got the better of my mom.
So I mean, that was your introduction. So at what stage in your life did you become close to Rosie and have a relationship with her?
Yes, now I was the privileged one. I visited them in Johannesburg during the school holidays when she was still, I think, high school or early years. So
Yeah, in high
yes,
school I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I did spend quite a lot of time with her, better than my other siblings and the other part of the family. I visited them a lot, yes, when I was in primary or before primary, I think.
And Carol, how was that? What was it like for you? Arriving at the house, seeing Rosie, living with this white family, with, not even being able to speak in a language that you understood, with a very white accent. How did you feel about that?
I didn't understand, like, why am I speaking to her and she doesn't understand. She has to ask her mom what is she saying. It was kind of a challenge when it was me and her in a room. I couldn't communicate with her. I first had to find my grandma, tell her what I want to ask her, and then it will be translated. It was like a challenge. We would go somewhere, I'm with her in a car, there's no communication. She's trying to reach out. I don't understand her. It's a challenge, but
did you envy her, or did you feel sad for her, or was it nothing? Did you just find the whole situation a little strange?
As a child, I felt it was just strange, but now that I understand and I'm spending more time with her as an older version of Carol, I now understand and I feel sad for her because it's not her choice. She didn't make a choice. She would love to understand Tswana. She is trying to learn Tswana. I feel sad for her. You understand? It's like she should have spent more time with us so that she knows us better, but she couldn't at that time because of her career.
Yeah.
So I feel sad for her.
And how do you feel about the fact that she's now with her biological family and she's learning, as you say, the language and more about her culture?
I'm happy about that. I'm happy that she's home, but still, career, she has to travel abroad or she has to go to different places. So, there's still a bit of distance, but I'm happy that she is home now. And whenever I'm home, because I'm also far, whenever I go home, we get along, we have a family get together, do things together. So I enjoy the fact that she's now at home.
Oh, that's lovely. Very special, Carol. Thank you. Thanks, Carol, and thanks for giving us the story from your angle, from your experience. It's been lovely chatting.
Love you.
Love you, bye.
Bye.
Bye, Carol. I can imagine for this young girl coming along and visiting you and seeing you in that environment and not being able to communicate.
And also now I understand that I'm also angry and I'm a teenager, so I'm dealing with my teenage issues. And then now I've got this kid.
Yeah.
And all of my friends know that I've got a white family. Now I've got this kid and I've got to explain.
Just more complications.
Yeah.
But isn't it fantastic? I just love that you've been welcomed back with these open arms.
Without even any questions.
So accepting.
That's for me the true definition of unconditional love. It wasn't any questions asked. It's there, And, touch wood, God forbid something should happen to me, it would be one phone call and one of them would be here.
Through all of that. They're still there.
Yeah.
So Rosie, I mean, your get up and go, this attitude, because you've achieved so much. You're doing fantastic things, movies and producing and directing and presenting and emceeing and international work.
Yeah.
You've done phenomenal things. Do you think that in some way this turbulent upbringing, where you've not known exactly where you fit in and where you position yourself, in some way gave you an advantage?
It did. It gave me an advantage that I don't see color because of what I've been through. That I'm open to so many different other traditions and cultures. And I can go from New York City to Lagos within one day, and it won't even be a problem for me.
Right. Okay.
So yes, it gave me that great advantage, but it did give me the disadvantage of, one of the things that really was great about was when my biological grandmother passed away, and I sat at the funeral and I couldn't sing any of the songs because I didn't know them. And it was one of the most beautiful funerals, if for want of a better word.
I can imagine.
But so yes, it had its advantages, but it also did have its disadvantages.
Now you McGuide.
Yeah.
You converted to Judaism in 2011. That is no easy task. But so through all of this, and finding your voice, because I think with drama, through characters and portraying characters, that's where Rosie found her voice. Yet you still went and decided to convert.
Yeah.
Why?
You see, for me, I was getting to the stage. I mean, there was a bit of turmoil that was happening with my adopted family, and I my dream, and I still will do the move to New York one day, and I packed up and I was going to leave, and everything fell through, from the job offers, from the person I was going to stay with even passed away, and I was like, okay, I'm not supposed to leave South Africa.
Yes.
And I hit a major depression because I had given up jobs, sold a lot of my stuff, was living in this really horrible bachelor apartment. And I went through this horrible depression, and then I lost two very, very close friends. And I thought to myself, well, I need somebody to talk to on my own, and I need some form of guidance or something along the way. And for the first time in a long time, I prayed. And then I got a call from a woman who I'd met many years ago to say, listen, and we met at this interracial adoption agency group many years ago that I gave a talk at. Would you mind coming and speaking at our synagogue? And I was like, okay. Went to the synagogue and I gave my story, and it was great, beautiful. And they said, well, if you want to stay for the service afterwards, because it was on a Saturday morning, you're more than welcome. Now, the first time I'd been in a Reform shul was in New York. And I got back, I was like, my goodness, New York, women and men were sitting together.
Yes.
It was a female rabbi. I was like, this can only happen in New York. Anyway, so I go in after this talk, and I see there's no segregation between men and women. And then I see the rabbi's a female. I was like, what? And then I just kept on going back to services after that. And the more I prayed and the more I created a pathway for me and God, I realized, okay, maybe this is a journey that I could go on. And I sat and I spoke to my rabbi, and he says, well, look, it's long and strenuous. I was like, you know what? Even if it takes me 5 years, let me go on it. And I told him what my story was and what have you. And he was like, well, it might be a bit easier for you than other people. Because he was still like, okay, so why do you want to do it? I was like, it's just something inside of me. And for me, that was my spiritual connection. And I went on it. And it was one of the best things that I ever did. And even just the practical things, like learning about some of the festivals, growing up, and why you do certain things. I remember asking my adopted mom, she was like, because we do. And then now reading about it, oh, that's why we do it,
Okay.
So, and then the day that I sat in front of the two rabbis and the witness, and the rabbi said to me, he goes, okay, well, if we were to give you a certificate, what would you do? I said, I would probably cry, because this has been it's been difficult, because it's working and learning. And I mean, my Hebrew isn't where it should be, but learning another language altogether is at a later age as an adult is also very difficult. And then they sent me out the room and made me sit outside for I think about an hour. And I was like shaking. So this woman kept coming to go to more coffee. I was like, I don't need more coffee. I don't need more coffee. She goes, it's okay, it'll be all right. And I went into the room, and the rabbi said to me, he goes, okay, we've got bad news and good news. So I said, okay, well, give me the bad news first. He goes, well, you're a Jew. And And the good news, he goes,
Oh,
you can
that's
go.
too funny.
And I did. I burst into tears, and I remember looking at me, gave me my certificate, and he was like, "Okay, you can leave now," you know. And that for me was absolutely phenomenal. And you know, my spiritual connection, even if I don't manage to get to synagogue every Friday night or Saturday morning, my reading and my connection on my own and my own meditation has strengthened over the last couple of years, and I think that has also built my character even more. And understanding that I now, because I want to have children in a couple of years' time, I now understand why it's so important to have this platform or a grounding that children can place themselves on, or something that they can learn from.
Right.
So whether it's going to be, I'm not saying that it has to be a staunch Christian or Muslim or Jewish or whatever, but they need to know that this is who they turn to. I had that in it was wishy-washy. At school I was Catholic, when I was in Pogeng I was Lutheran, and when I was in Emmarentia I was Jewish. You know, so it was never ever, this is who you are, this is how you follow things, this is what you do. And for the first time I had that. You know, and it was almost like I had my rituals. Of what I was
So
doing.
how does that conflict with Judaism, and because you just have so many of the traditions, how does that conflict with you going back home?
Yeah.
And learning your traditions, your roots, your ancestry, and everything
You see,
there.
that's where the balance, and that's where the major challenge has been the last couple of months.
Right.
Because my family are very, very Christian. My sister's incredibly religious. And it's understanding and respecting that. But it's also now for me to explain and say, actually, yes, I hear what you're saying. And yes, we are family. But these are my beliefs. And that's why the first couple of months, I mean, I didn't go to synagogue for a while because I was there. But now I've adjusted my routine where I will come to Johannesburg maybe on a Wednesday or Thursday, so I can go to shul Friday night and then go back on the Saturday. And if I don't, then I will sit at home and I'll read.
Yeah.
Or you know.
It's so interesting, Rosie, because I mean, if we look at your upbringing and being in this family and always feeling like you didn't fully belong,
Yeah.
you know, and converting to Judaism,
Yeah.
and this is something that you chose, this is something that you've wanted to do, and you'll go into a shul, and yet again, you're going to be the only black person sitting in a shul.
Fortunately, at my shul, it's very multiracial.
Is
which
it
great.
really?
Yeah, that's really,
Fantastic.
really great, which is beautiful. But you know what what I love is that even if it wasn't, and I remember going to another shul in Johannesburg, and it was Friday night, and for me it was my meditation. For the first time, yes, people looked, and I was like, it didn't actually even bother me, because my connection with God, and that is the name that I even chose, Raziella, which is my secret with God. It's just that, and nobody can take that away from me. You know, I even had an argument with one of my adopted family members, and they turned around and said, "Yo, well, you're not even a proper Jew." And I was like, "You can't take that away from me. No matter what you do, you can never take that away." You know, and that's why I think I mentioned
That's nasty. Okay.
sure. Yeah, but you know, that's something that I think I needed, and I think that's also grounded me, and led me to the point was, yes, okay, now I've gotten my spiritual holding and pathway. I need to tap in, and I mean, the image that comes from my head is actually grabbing the soil, and that's what I've done. I needed that. That was my I think my, what is it called, the lifeline, because when the decision that I made when I was going to go home, if I had stayed in Johannesburg, and yes, work was there and things were happening, but because I wasn't dealing with certain things, I honestly believe I probably would have had a stroke or a heart attack.
So you were very ill.
Yeah.
Your mother called you home.
Yeah. I called,
And-
I said, I'm coming home.
And you went home.
yeah, I called extra space. I was
Okay,
like,
because I mean, you live an incredible life
Yeah.
in Joburg
Yeah.
with all of this.
I'm a city girl,
You're
you
a
know?
city girl. These opportunities. You're traveling. You're
Yeah.
getting awards. You're producing and directing and
Yeah.
and doing all of these things, and you chose to remove yourself and
Yeah.
and ensconce yourself in who you truly are,
Yeah.
where you came from.
Yeah.
And there Rosie comes back together.
Yeah.
And you still are? Is this a process for you?
It's a process, but also I also just thought, you know, I've got a father who I also don't really know that well, who's 85, and a lot of my friends are saying, you know, I wish I could have had that extra conversation with my dad, and I've said that about my adopted dad because I was very close to him, and although the relationship isn't where I want it to be, it's okay. You know, the most beautiful thing is that when I go home, he's like, "Hello, my daughter," and that for me
Oh,
is just
Rosie.
like, it warms my heart. And you know, originally it was just going to be a month. And it's stayed up until now, and I'm going to probably stay till end of December, end of Jan. purely because there are just other conversations that I think will come out. And then next year we'll start again. But I think from next year, even if I do move to Johannesburg and get an apartment, I will be going home a lot more.
Extraordinary,
Yeah.
just extraordinary. and through all of this, because I can't even read out all the credentials because there are so many, but one of the things that you are is the vice chairman of Power,
Yeah.
People Opposing Women Abuse. Now, you've appeared in Eve Ensler's Vagina Monologues. You talk about a boyfriend at varsity who abused you.
Yeah.
So, you stand up strong,
Yeah.
and you're not scared to be heard and,
Yeah.
and to be counted.
Yeah.
How is that for you?
That is phenomenal, and that's also something that I also realize is that I'm very vocal on those issues, and I will stand forward. But there were some things that I wasn't being vocal and honest to me, and one of them was actually not having that connection with my biological past and my family. So now it's actually even catapulted my activism to another level, because I'm a lot more confident. Yes, I've been confident before.
And authentic and congruent, and yes, I can imagine.
And somebody said to me, when are you going to be tired of talking about vagina monologues and vaginas? I was like, you know what, when you stop damaging them, that's when I will stop. It's my activism is my other career. There's Rosie the entertainer, and then there's Rosie the activist, and I'm fortunate that I can merge them all. Sometimes that was also another balance that I had to create, was that sometimes I would do all this activism work and they're like, oh, okay, wait a minute, I've got rent to pay. So it's getting that balance and creating that balance again.
So many things happening in your life, finding yourself,
and then now
helping others,
but and now splitting that time where I'm spending more of the time with the family. Because there would be times where every weekend I'd be out volunteering or doing court preparation, whatever. And yes, it's important, but also I realize you can't give too much off, because then it actually depletes you and you don't have the energy to do anything
You're filling
else.
your vessel.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on what's happening in South Africa when we talk about how many women are violated, raped every? I was listening how
it
many
scares me even
seconds, and what's happening to our children,
Yeah.
and how do you cope with that?
It frightens me, because first of all, there's a void when it comes for young boys, particularly young black boys, who don't know where they are and where they fit into society, and it's not their fault. A survey was done many years ago, but 3-4 years ago. 75% of young boys, they said, well, who do you look up to? And it was a woman. And although
that's
that's
so
great,
sad.
but it's incredibly sad
To have
because
that
a young
mentor,
boy
that male
needs
role model.
A woman can't give that, And then you got the male role models who it's fashion to pick up so many girls or slap girls around and that type of thing. So this is what they're aspiring to, number one. Number two, they also don't know how to exert themselves. So the only way they're going to do it is through force, because they have the strength. So we're in a very, very volatile situation. And then you have gentlemen my age or even slightly even older, who are for women and women's liberation and so forth, but still believe in the hierarchy system. So we'll prove to them, okay, fine, you want to have your job and do whatever, then they'll go and there's a younger girl who will do whatever I want, and I can, and so it's at the
How
moment.
do you change something like that? Because that's a mindset.
It's a mindset, and it's a mindset. It comes from an early age. There's got to be gender equality at home. There's got to be gender equality within the schools and teaching them that, and confidence, instilling that confidence in young girls. Saying that yes, if you want that nice handbag, work for it. Somebody said to me,
don't just have a sugar daddy who's going to give it to you.
who's just going to give it to you, because along with the sugar daddy, you're going to get an STD and AIDS, and maybe a baby or two.
And then your opportunities.
And I've ruffled a number of feathers, because there are certain well-known businessmen in South Africa who have taken up flats next to certain technicons and basically just picking up young girls.
So what are you doing about that?
It's all happening. I've had a few threatening phone calls. So.
But so much so that I mean, for the rights of women and children, you climbed Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
How was that?
Wow.
Nothing holds you back.
That was totally insane.
Was it? Did you practice a lot? Train.
You trained, but you know what? Nothing prepares you for that mountain, because the people who got up the quickest and got down and were fine were the heavy smokers and the older people.
Oh, sis, really?
First of all, my first day, I got a stomach bug. At breakfast, I didn't even think. I picked up the jug of water, which was from the spring, not realizing you're only supposed to drink bottled water. So, first day,
big mistake.
Yeah, but that first night, I thought to myself, well, actually, I got through this day, because there are many times where you have a stomach bug and you think, well, hell no, am I going to work? You can't deal with it. But I managed. And the first day, you're walking for about, I think, maybe 9 to 10 hours.
Wow.
But because of the altitude, and the altitude isn't bad at the bottom, but there you've got to start practicing, so you walk very, very slowly. So the first day was horrible. Second day was slightly better. Then halfway through the second day, I mean, you go through heavy rocky mountain and then suddenly desert storm where you're wrapped up and you feel like Prince of Arabia and your eyes are popping up because there's this sandstorm that comes from nowhere. And then 3.5 hours later, there's snow up to your knees. And then up to the summit, and unfortunately I didn't get to the summit because I got ill and I was carried down. But those conversations that I was having with myself and with God were crazy, because I was cursing, and then at times I was fine, and then you'd see somebody walking down saying, well, this mountain's not going to take me, and then you've got to eat chocolate to keep your energy up.
Oh, there's the advantage of climbing Kili.
But at the same time, because of the altitude, your stomach doesn't want to handle anything, so you're coming out at all ends.
Really?
So your guard is you're the guide that's taking you up sees everything, because the minute you go to the toilet, you got to like wrap up, otherwise everything freezes because it's minus 14 degrees.
So I didn't know it was so cold.
So at times, at one point, I looked up at this mountain and it looked so scary, and I saw, and you have these lights on your head to see where you're going. And I looked up, I thought, what are we doing? We're Africans. We don't do this. And then I was like, okay, no, the cause. And you go. And you've got to walk incredibly slowly, but you take 2 steps and then you can't breathe. So you've got to stop and breathe. And you carry it on going.
That's very scary.
Yeah.
Gee.
But I'm going again in February.
Are you?
I'm going to summit this time, yeah. Now I'm not going to drink the water, and I'm going to take my medication.
You'll be fully prepared.
Yeah, I'll be fully prepared. But
I think that's very brave of you.
In terms of the strength, it wasn't that bad, because it's not that steep.
Mental strength.
Yeah, it's the mental strength.
Mental strength.
And I think because my body, my immune system was down because of those first 2 days of vomiting. My body was just like, and then something said to me, no, the mountain will always be here.
And it will be revisited by you in February.
Absolutely.
So, Rosie, besides climbing mountains, spending time with your biological family and reconnecting with who you are, finding your identity at last, what else are you doing? What else do you have time for?
Well, I have my own talent agency, which is Waka Talent, which is Pan-African, and hence I travel across Africa a lot. And now I've partnered with a group called Planet Radio TV, who have launched their own channel in West Africa and are going East Africa as well.
It's
so
exciting.
with my talent and with my production expertise, I'm coming on board. I've come on board with them for content and talent.
Oh, great.
So that's where the business side of Rosie's been taken care of, and for next year, the very exciting projects are happening. And how I'm structuring is that I need to find love again. You know, when I'm in love, I'm good at love, and I'm ready for it.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have to chat again.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask you a question.
Yes.
If you were your mom in that situation, in that time of your life, knowing the kind of opportunities that would come to your child, what decision would you make?
Whoa. You know, if I would have been a little bit more adamant about teaching me about being Tswana, learning, more importantly, being proud. For me, pride is such an important part of my life now. And if it meant at the cost of my education, then taking my child out of that situation. Yeah.
Do you feel, having had the experience, I asked you a little bit earlier, just talking about, did it give you an edge in your career and what, you know, standing up and asking for what you want? When you look back, I asked you what your decision would have been, which means you wish that your mother had maybe been a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
But do you look back at this experience that you've had, and do you see it as a gift? Do you see it as would you have preferred not to have had that experience?
You know, I think if I didn't have that experience, I would have had another form of experience.
Okay.
So maybe I would have been politically involved or caught up in the 76 riots, or dealing with the issues of racism back then, or one of the biggest challenges that I used to have up until when I was in matric was going home from this 5-bedroom house to a 2-room house, with no running water and electricity. So dealing with those experiences, so I would have had challenges on another level. My sister was...
So it was a gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift
absolutely.
for you?
I think it was more of a gift and more privileges because of what I was exposed to and the people that I was exposed to. And the fact that, because somebody said to me, well, and everyone always asks, well, who are you going to marry, a white or black guy? I'm going to marry a wonderful man.
A man you fall in love
Yeah.
with. I love that. Rosie Motene, it has been such a joy having you in the studio,
Thank
sharing
you.
your story. And I'm sure so many people have been riveted, just wanting to hear more. So we're going to keep our eye on you. And I'm
Thank
hoping
you.
you're going to come back into the studio, tell us about the wonderful
God willing,
ascent of
the next time I
Kili.
come back, I'll be
And in
pregnant
love.
and married and have an Oscar in hand.
Just take me with you. I'm very good at packing. Rosie, lovely. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And thank you for tuning in. I do hope that you enjoyed the story. If you've got stories that you would like to hear, that you would want to share, go to the website and contact me. Conversationswithniki.co.za. Take care. Look after yourself until next week. Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Esvia Prinsloo, and I'm the HOD of IT Integration at Bridwin Preparatory School in Melrose. We started using study apps about 6 months ago and have seen astonishing results. We were quite amazed to see how quickly the kids have been able to use study apps and the benefits it has shown with regards to reinforcing what they've already learned inside the classroom. I would highly recommend study apps for any school.
Studyapps.co.za. Conversations with Niki was brought to you by Studyapps.co.za, South Africa's leading education app for tablets.